The Miami Dolphins. I'm going to tell you straight up. I like this hire better and better the more we got deeper into the carousel. Having said that, I wasn't huge on Hafley. I know a ton of people who are. I mean, goodness gracious. Hafley seemed to have as many supporters, honestly, as mentor as some of these other unproven head coach guys. He seemed to have just as many supporters, but from a different faction. But the deeper we've got into this carousel, the more I've liked the hiring of him. So go ahead and tell us about Jeff Hafley and his staff.
Well, it's ironic, Ben, because as time goes, I like this hire less and less. I was a Hafley supporter as kind of like I thought he was like on that tier two. Like if Harbaugh and Stefanski and I don't even know if I was putting Minter in tier one necessarily, but if Harbaugh and Stefanski and then the potential of Tomlin was like tier one of coaches available this cycle, Hafley to me was tier two because hey, we've seen him be a head coach before, we've seen him in college, the NFL, we've seen him transform defenses. Um, Seems like a really good teacher, really good connector of personalities, but also seems like he's going to be tough and like set a standard, all of that stuff. But now, what I'm not liking is something that is it's a factor that people always say against hiring the defensive-minded head coach, and it's what are they going to do with the offensive side of the ball? The process of getting to Miami and retaining Bobby Slowick, who had been fired from Houston the year before and latched on to Miami as their pass game coordinator, and getting to Miami and finding Slowick and saying, I'm not only going to keep you, but I'm going to promote you to offensive coordinator. And then how about you go back to Houston, where you coordinated one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and hire their assistant offensive line coach to be our offensive line coach? For a team that has had poor offensive line play and up and down offenses over the last 3 seasons, is really troublesome. Not only because I'm worried about what the offense is actually going to look like on the field, but I think it also speaks to a little bit of that. This guy hasn't been an NFL lifer. This guy hasn't been in a lot of different places in the NFL to collect a lot of business cards, let's say, from NFL coaches. And did he just like get in the building and like meet the positional coaches and be like, "Hey, Slowick, I kind of like you. We have both worked in San Francisco at different points, and I want to shake your hand, and now we're here. Um, and let's promote you." It feels a little icky. So that's the part I'm most worried about. Um, we should say while we're here that today the Miami Dolphins released Tyreek Hill, um, the other wide receiver who's Nick Westbrook-Akine and Bradley Chubb. So they're already starting the like cap clearing. So this feels, and I'm sure two is going to be gone soon. Well, I shouldn't say soon. They have to work it out. But this feels like it's going to be a total tear down reset. And when I just think about Hafley and think about, okay, do I think he can do the job as head coach? Do I think he can lead a franchise? And do I think he can put together a good defense? He's bringing over a lot of defensive staff. Um, yes, yes, and yes. But man, if you're not going to get the offensive side of the ball thing right, then I'm nervous. And for Slowick to be kind of that first crack at it concerns me. Now listen, Slowick, his first year as OC in Houston, we liked and we were interested in. But year two and just what happened after that was really uninspiring. And it just kind of feels like a case of Hafley like didn't really know what to do with that side of the ball. So he just found a guy that had done the job before and was already in the building. So I'm a little nervous from that aspect. But Hafley himself, I was excited about going in, so I still gave this. I think I ended up giving this like a B minus. I gave it a B for vibes, a C plus for process, and again, even the process part was more about what Hafley did, not necessarily what Miami did to get Hafley.
I completely agree with you on 90% of what you just said. Okay. I thought that was beautifully well done with a couple of exceptions that you already know my history here on some of this. So, the Hafley hire, the more people I've heard talk about him. And again, I got to watch him at Boston College. Okay. When he was working there, I got familiar with him there. He rolls into Green Bay, and yeah, it upgrades the defense. You also get Micah Parsons along with that, but still, upgraded defense, excellent work there. I have no problem with him coming in. I do like the tough mindset. You mentioned that. I think that's very important in Miami. I think that's something that they had under Brian Flores. But you go before Flores and after Flores, it's not something they've had, along with what would feel like modern thinking and in high football IQ. They just haven't been able to get that. It feels like Hafley meets all of those. You mentioned all of that. Okay, so I'm on board with all of that completely. When it comes to though this because you mentioned this a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, when it comes to this offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick that he's put in, I was maybe I wasn't the first. I had to be one of the first. I didn't like Slowick's work, excuse me, during the first year when he was successful with Stroud. I looked at that offense. I didn't like the way he called plays. I didn't like the way the offense worked. I just thought it was kind of blocky. I thought it was unimaginative. I thought it was kind of clusterish. I felt like it had no smoothness, no efficiency, nothing. And I'm not talking about from a statistical standpoint. I'm talking about when I watched the offense. I hated that offense. And I said at the end of that first year, when everything was good, when they had a good season, Stroud's best year, I was like, I don't like this offense and I don't like the coordinator running it. So I sure as heck don't like it down here in Miami, where they're starting to take things apart. And, after, a second bad season there in Houston for the offensive side of the football when Sloak was there. And then, yeah, you mentioned the offensive line has been rough. I mean, rough down in Houston. The Miami Dolphins offensive line hasn't been great for years. They're working on it. It's gotten better. I would still like to see it improve, but it has improved over what it was before. And yet you're going to bring back in the Texans offensive line coach. I really struggle with that. I said this again a couple of weeks ago, and I don't mean to regurgitate everything. I would love to be the general manager for Jeff Hafley because I think the energy is there. I think the football IQ is there. I think his ability to handle the defense and run the team. He doesn't seem like the kind of a guy who's cheerleaderish, but he's got the energy. And to me, there's
Hmm.
a huge difference, man. I
Hmm.
I I have no time for head coaches that want to be, a little too cute, a little too, a little too sweet.
Hmm.
Hafley seems to bring the energy without being kind of hokey, if you will. I think
Hmm.
that's a really big difference. But I would love to be able to put players together for him. I think me and him would be in sync about the kind of players we would be looking for. And I would have to tell him, man, we're not bringing Slowick in here. Let me call around. Let me find somebody to be your offensive coordinator, and then you guys can put together the rest of the staff below that. But let's bring in one of these younger minds here. Let's bring in a Declan Doyle and hand him the play calling duties, right? Let's do something like that. I would have much preferred that. So I'm very skittish on the Dolphins here for the next year or two on the offensive side of the football. And maybe Slowick will prove me wrong, but so far Bobby ain't done it, so we will find out. But I still like the Jeff Hafley hire, especially as I've seen some of these other teams that we haven't talked about yet. As I've seen them hire coaches, I'm like, yeah, I prefer Hafley a lot to that.
Yeah. And maybe this will be a Mike McDonald going to Seattle situation where he hired Ryan Grubb out of Washington.
Yeah,
That went bad after 1 year. He fired him. He gets Kubiak in. But the difference is Ryan Grubb was coming off of like a really good season in college. So McDonald was like, let's mix things up. Let's do something a little different. Let's get this college guy that I really and Hafley just kind of walked in the building and per NFL.com, their interview tracker, Slowick was the only person they interviewed for the job. So it literally seems like Hafley walked in the first day and shook his hand and was like, "You want to be offensive coordinator? Let's just keep things rolling." And yeah, I don't love that.
come on, Jeff. You
Come
could
on,
have done
Jeff.
better. Yeah, there's still time. Hey, let's make the change now.
We'll talk about Nate Hackett, but I might have even preferred he just brought Nate Hackett from Green Bay. I might have preferred that.
I don't know. I'll have to chew on that one for a while. Okay. Well, we're getting strikes with everybody here. So that's the Miami Dolphins, y'all.